Like, we're not just brains on sticks that think about stuff and interpret information and process it like a computer. Like, we're humans, we're embodied that feel and touch and sense, and we want to play with concepts, and we do things in the world. And food is that opportunity to engage the other senses as we learn and hear about God and the Bible.
That was Paul Young from Providence Church in Perth. Taste and See is an immersive course that matches food with a gospel presentation. I'm Pete Hughes, and you've clicked on the Reach Australia podcast. And in this season, we're looking at different evangelistic tools to fill your missional toolbox with as many resources as possible. This is an interview that Scott Sanders did with Paul and Wendy Potts late last year. Paul created the course and Wendy helped develop it over a series of iterations. And we pick up the conversation where Scott's just asked, do we really need another evangelistic course?
Yeah, we don't need another one, to be honest. There are so many good courses out there and so many courses that are done really well. But as strategy shouldn't change, like, we're always wanting to tell the gospel to people and explain that clearly and really persuasively and winsomely. I think our tactics do change depending on context and the people that we're in front of. So Taste and See started because I had a group of mates around me and I wanted to give them one last shot to kind of, before we moved to Sydney for a little while, to hear the gospel, and just wanted some way to connect with them. And they all loved food at that time. We're all loving MasterChef and kind of cooking some fancy stuff. And so that's how it started. It arose from the need. From that, it's not like we thought, that's a great idea. It's kind of like, let's make it into a resource. But other people started to hear about it. And when people who heard about it from other churches that had tried it, just like the very initial drafts that was scribbles on pieces of paper, started to give it real shots and started to feedback that they really liked it, it seemed to suggest actually maybe there's something in how we're using Taste and See that could really be useful for other churches, not just our own.
Now, Wendy, you've been around doing mission and thinking about evangelism in a whole bunch of different contexts for many years. Another course, yeah? Do we need another course?
Yeah, look, it's a great question, isn't it? And I agree with Paul. There are lots of great courses out there, but I'd have to quote Chapo here, John Chapman, because he just said, you've got to keep recreating fresh gospel resources. And I think something that's homegrown, created for our time by Australian people is a good thing. And there's some unique things about Taste and See that I think mean that it fits a slot that it isn't necessarily being covered by other courses. So we can go into that a bit more.
Well, yeah. How does Taste and See work as an evangelistic course? I guess what's its point of difference?
Yeah. Well, I think there are a few things. Obviously, the food is a big one, but lots of other courses use food and hospitality. But I think what Paul's really picked up on here is using food not just for the community thing, which it is, a powerful community connector, but also as an illustration, a three-dimensional illustration of the gospel. And so each week the food represents that content of the gospel, and we have got 4 weeks, and I think that's another factor. It's a short course. It's not sitting alone. I think that it's an introduction. It's an invitation. It's the big meta-narrative of the gospel in broad brushstrokes.
So as you say, food is a part of most courses, putting on hospitality. I can remember kind of road testing Simpler Christianity with, John Dixon at St. Clement's Church, and it was, a glass of Chardonnay and a cheese board.
Cheese and Vickies.
Yeah, that's it. That was a key part of that sort of home and inviting people in.
Yeah.
Taste and See, though, food is kind of a key part of each of the weeks. Just unpack that a little bit more.
Yeah, so the food is a universal language. It brings people together. It breaks down barriers, and we know that when we do dinner parties with friends. So there's that, and that's what you're describing with Simply Christianity anyway. But the thing about Taste and See is that week 1, it was good. It focuses on creation and the beauty and wonder and design of creation, and we use fresh, beautiful food from the ground. And salads and vegetarian. And then in that way, it illustrates that concept. And then week 2, it's what's gone wrong, and it's the fall, and we use fast food, junk food, and use the food to illustrate that concept. And week 3, the Great Rescue, we focus on the Middle Eastern food, and we have a modern day Passover meal, and we hear how Jesus reinterprets that to share the message of the cross. And week 4 is the future hope. We have an international banquet picturing the nations coming together and God's new creation.
So that's almost like a bring a plate as well. That kind of almost involves,
it can be,
involves
some,
a group. Yeah.
Some churches have tried that to great effect. It doesn't have to be; depends on your context.
Yeah. Okay. So Paul, you talked about kind of having that one last shot with your mates, and it seemed like food. Food was the attractive thing that actually got them in. It was the bait of the switch. Come and I'll cook you. So in that first instance, was it you who was kind of cooking these meals, organising the food, and getting everyone over, and and then you'd open up the Bible and talk through stuff? Is that kind of how it worked at the start?
Yeah, it pretty much was how it worked at the start. I was just, I remember that year just wanting to try half a dozen things, and that was one of them, and Taste and See was one of them. And mates would come over, would cook a meal, would talk about a part of the Bible and how the meal explains that. That's how it would run. And I think that makes sense of a lot of things for me. Like, we're not just brains on sticks that think about stuff and interpret information and process it like a computer. Like, we're humans, we're embodied that feel and touch and sense, and we want to play with concepts, and we do things in the world. And food is that opportunity to engage the other senses as we learn and hear about God and the Bible.
So, what's the shape of a night? What does it look like, Wendy?
Well, it depends a bit on your context, but if it was a typical church-hosted evening, then there's time and space for welcoming, mingling, gathering over perhaps a starter, getting seated, and then there's the main course, an introduction to the night by the host. Main course is served. There might be a starter question around the table to get people discussing things, and then the presentation happens sort of midway through that meal. The presenter might share their story at the beginning just to break the ice a bit and get them known. The presentation happens, and then through that presentation is some discussion moments around the table. So I think that's quite critical, because it's not just a sermon, it's an interactive presentation, and then there's Q&A at the end and
everything else. So you're covering creation, fall, redemption, new creation. It seems like there's a lot of information, a lot of content, but it sounds as though the bulk of the portion of the evening is actually getting the table to be talking and discussing these rich kind of biblical points in time, but also key themes that we see in the flow of Scripture.
Certainly lots of content, but we try to do it in broad brush strokes. Is that true, Paul? Would you say just you're covering the meta-narrative of the gospel? You're not trying to say everything in 1 week or even 4 weeks, and I'll talk about that later where it fits on the mission pathway. But there is definitely content, and it's content rich, but I think breaking up that content with conversation and opportunities for the table to engage at the beginning, midway, and at the end is really important, as well as that three-dimensional learning, which Paul has referred to with the food. We want people to do good experiential learning. We know as educators know that people learn in different ways. So it's head, heart, hands. It's not just hearing, it's experiencing. You're experiencing community, experiencing conversation around the table, but you've got visuals and you've got beautiful food illustrating the concept.
Paul, do you want to?
There are broad brushstrokes being played in every kind of meal, but I do think one of the convictions, particularly when Wendy Potts and Rory Shiner help rewrite all the content and make it usable and actually made it into what it is today, there is an element where we wanted to push people and show people that there's more under the hood here than what they necessarily think. So when we mean broad brushstrokes, we don't mean something that we're imagining explaining it to a kid in Sunday school. We are imagining that we're engaging skeptics, people with big questions about the gospel who've thought critically about what's going on. Now, we've tried to make it appropriate for other kind of contexts as well as we've refined the material. But we did want to engage with the big questions that people are thinking. So it's simple, but not simplistic. And we do dive into those bigger questions over going through those contexts of different key parts of the Bible.
Good. So I'm keen to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of putting a night on. I guess one of the questions, a number of people might be thinking, wow, this is going to require a lot. Like I struggle just to make a meal for my own family or myself, and now you're asking me to make it for 10, 15, 20 people. So is something like this sustainable? Is it scalable? Is there a limit on the number of people you can actually have attend the course?
Yeah, great question. Want me to go for it?
Yeah, you go for it, Wendy. Yeah.
It is scalable. I think that this is the beauty of the concept. It can be run small in a home around someone's table. I think that thing about around 12 people around the table is about as big as you can go for that more intimate group. But then if you want to scale it up, you can have 3, 5 tables of 8. And there's definitely a different dynamic going on there. But I think the key is making sure the table has a table host when on the big scale that can help facilitate conversation and look after that group week by week and between the sessions.
Now, the busy person might be thinking, I'd love an off-the-shelf resource that has the video and all I got to do is kind of click play. But you've created this in terms of a script and a PowerPoint, and a discussion that someone actually has to learn and has to deliver and has to give. I guess why have you chosen that rather than recording Rory Shiner, he's a pretty good speaker, to deliver kind of the content of the evening.
So hilariously, we actually have recorded Rory, but you can probably believe that.
But it's not on the website, so you've made a decision there intentionally to say, no, we're going to give you a script rather than a video. Yeah,
because I think the way that you communicate something communicates something. The way that you do something teaches something, and I totally get. I mean, I'm a church planting pastor. I totally get it's busy and it's so there are a million things you need to be doing, and I've delegated like a million things to the floor, and they're not going to get done. But I think there is worth in putting some of our best time and effort into whatever evangelistic stuff we're doing. Now, I could talk about that for a little bit longer if you wanted, but I guess going back to the course, if we're hosting people over meals, I think there's something like really endearing about it that we're actually talking to them face to face and live about these issues that we're really grappling with and thinking about, huge issues about God and eternity and Jesus. And so it feels like, and I think the mechanism is right that we do it face to face.
It's
Wendy?
Yeah, it's more personal, isn't it? I think there is some great advantages to the videos, especially the well created ones. But I think that at the end of the day, we've at this stage at least made that just creative decision not to go there, because we do want the person on the ground to own this and share this more personally to their context.
Okay, so Paul, I guess the other question is, does it work? What have you actually seen in the Providence Network and at Providence Bayswater have you been running Taste and See?
Yeah, we've run it in a variety of locations and in different contexts. So I've run it around with a couple of people around my own dinner table. I've run it with 20 people around our dinner table. We've run it City has run it with 50 people over 3 or 4 tables. We've run it in our youth group. We've run it with our kind of women and Barb's Bible study group over lunch or kind of morning tea in the morning. So we've tried to adapt it actually over many different contexts. And what we've found is, the food does break down barriers. And it's a really helpful way to explain something that's so deeply important with that thing in front of you. It does take a team. It does take a team of people to do it, is what we've found. Like I have run it individually myself, but it's always way better when I involve other people. And I think there's a real joy in that, actually. Like if we want to put some of our best time and effort and some of our best people on the ground in our church into evangelism and mission, we can involve them with stuff like this. And I think lots of people have actually found that really enjoyable, not because they're always a person presenting, but because they have other skills and other gifts and abilities like cooking or making dessert or opening up their home. And they love that they can be a part of a way that people are coming to know Jesus. I think it's true in whoever I speak to that maybe not everyone wants to be the person standing up giving the evangelistic talk, but everyone wants to be a part of a church where people are coming to know Jesus. And I think if we pitch that there are different ways to help with that happening in our church, people are actually really excited and willing to do it.
So, Paul, you've kind of talked lots about inputs there and activity, but the outcome of actually getting people converted, what have you seen in terms of actually seeing people converted? And I might hear from you and then hear from Wendy.
Yeah, great question. Yeah. So when we ran Taste and See, when we came back in 2021, this was kind of like the new and updated edition a little bit. And we ran Taste and See. I'm trying to remember how many people we ran it with that year. I can't remember off the top of my head. But we'd always have a follow-up course after Taste and See, and we called that Investigate, where we take someone through Mark's Gospel in 5 weeks. If someone did Taste and See with us and they made it through Investigate, we were finding that we're having a 50% conversion rate. Mm. Now, those numbers are high. I think the sample size was too low for that to really have significant. But when you have 8 or 10 conversions that year, that was great. That was a real encouragement to see. I think we found the follow through from Taste and See to Investigate was roughly 1 in 4. So I guess that year, what did we have? We had 40 non-Christians come through the course. We'd roughly 8 or 10 of them become Christian. Yeah.
So it's about 25% conversion rate, which is what we see on most courses, So it's partly often why I say I'm agnostic on courses. I just want you to do one, just pick one and do one, because we're finding that group dynamic is actually working. As people gather around the gospel, surprise, surprise, as they interact with God's word and get challenged with repentance and faith, they make a decision. Generally what we see is about 25% of the time. When you've run this lots in retirement villages, with different church groups and church sizes, what have you seen about its impact or its working? Is it making a difference?
I'd love to answer that on a few levels, if you don't mind, Scott. So I think the impact is you want to recognise where Taste and See fits on the mission pathway, because even though we do obviously invite people to put their trust in Christ at the end of 4 weeks, we also recognise that this could be a part of the process for them where they're not quite at that spot yet. So inviting them to the next step of have they enjoyed this, would they like to dig deeper and explore a gospel further, is often the expectation that I come to running that course with. But what we see is a beautiful impact on many levels, because the conversations on the night or the feedback afterwards is often people saying, oh, that really struck me. I haven't thought about this for a long time or ever. It's got me thinking. I think that's a really beautiful impact to come away with. Christians have said, I've just had these most meaningful conversations with my good friend on the way home in the car, and that one-to-one follow-up that can then happen between friends, because you've empowered the Christian to have those deeper conversations or to kickstart those conversations. For me, that's a great win. And I think the other impact that perhaps is a bit hidden is that the Christians on the team, the Christians who've invited their friends, there's a training element that goes on, because they're experiencing a growing confidence in having gospel conversations and how to talk about the gospel in a meaningful, unfolding way over time. And so when they've been a part of it, they come away more excited, more confident, and that has ripples out to the everyday.
Yeah, so it really, I'm really encouraged to hear that you talk about follow-up because that's often the problem that we see, in terms of the mission ecosystem. A church will run a course, maybe once, and then they go, look, we didn't see a lot of traction, so they don't run it again, or they wait until they get this, this magic number of how many people. But often it doesn't work because actually people are long further back and they need a follow-up, and then they need another follow-up, and they need another follow-up.
Yeah,
so
it's time.
I love that Taste and See is kind of another way in to get people to interact and move them into your mission funnel and into your sort of mission ecosystem in church life.
And there's something else to say there. We've talked about where we've mentioned the follow-up end, which I think is critical to build in before you start Taste and See, the expectation that you want to have a sense of inviting someone to explore the gospel further. But the other end, before Taste and See, is also important to have in your thinking, in your mission strategy, which is, have you, as a congregation, got meaningful relationships with non-Christians, relationships of trust and depth, where you've already done all that beautiful work of spending time together in each other's worlds, meeting each other's friends, having those deeper conversations, because it's only then that someone will say yes to your invitation to come to dinner for 4 weeks.
Now, someone's a number of us are probably asking, what does it cost? How do I get access to it? Wendy, give us the pitch.
Oh, sure. Website tasteandsee.org.au. All the information's there, and shoot us an email if you like from the website. But the cost at the moment is it's $100. And you want to know what you get?
Yeah, what's included in the $100?
What you get is the full presenter scripts, the full presenter PowerPoints. You get a set of 12 training videos that Paul's beautifully created for these kinds of questions that we're answering here. You get a welcome to the table document, which is a really good introduction to the philosophy and the workings and the practicalities, some guidance around menus and decoration and how to pull this off as a team. And you get some promotional stuff. There's a trailer and some invitations and graphics like that.
So you pretty much got everything you need in order to run the course, from the invitation all the way to the follow-up.
That was Taste and See, and it is a very exciting course. I've personally seen a number of churches that have implemented and seen some incredible fruit from it. So make sure that you have a look at the link and see whether this is something you may want to implement in your church. But whatever you do, do something. I'm Pete Hughes. Chat soon.